The views expressed here are those of our hosts and guest speakers and do not represent the Uniformed Services University, the Department of War, or the Henry M. Jackson Foundation for the Advancement of Military Medicine, Incorporated. I am Mandatory Fun Day, and we are back with the Check Your Six Pack podcast, a podcast centered around the military and veteran community and some problems that people have with alcohol consumption, whether their own or the people close to them in their own lives. These stories are inspirational. We're going to get into what led to where people fell and then what brought them back, what brought them up and where they are now. I'm here today with Tyler Gray. He came all the way from Florida to be with us, and we are really, really excited to tell you his story. Tyler, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Tyler Gray. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to, actually that might sound weird, I'm very excited to talk about this, but I am, I am because I think it's important, and I really believe in sharing stories about this, and I think it can help people, which I really appreciate you having me here so I can talk about that.
Absolutely. I love the direction that this project is going because it shows there's no one size fits all to the adversity some people face in relation to substances. But there's also no one size fits all for how people kind of get right, if that makes sense. You know, how people kind of get to where they should be. A healthy relationship with alcohol is ideal, obviously. And so, we've got stories all across the spectrum, some incredibly devastating and some, more benign. But can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yes, absolutely. First I'll say to your point, I think that's a critical point, is that there's so many modalities out there, and, it feels like the people that the modalities work for, or the people that are, in charge of putting those modalities out, generally kind of seem to take an approach of like, this is the fix. Yeah. And it is for some people, and I think it's very critical to, you have to look at each one and try out each one, and I'll go into that later, and see what works for you.
Sure.
Because nothing is, none of them are one, at least in my experience, one size fits all. So, my personal story really, in a way, I would argue, starts, with alcohol. And as a kid, you use the word adversity. And there's like three words that I kind of use interchangeably, but they're not interchangeable, but they are. And what I mean by that is, like, I grew up as a kid, the environment I grew up in was chaotic. I use the term chaotic. Adverse probably isn't a word that would make sense, but I use the word chaotic, and I don't use the word traumatic.
Sure.
And the reason I'm not using the word traumatic is because I just feel like there's so much in that word.
Yeah.
There's like an expectation of
what
it
sure,
is.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And
100%.
it's like, it has this connotation. It's like, oh, hold on. And the biggest thing that I've found is that people as adults, especially veterans, I'm looking at you guys, we look at like our childhood as adults and go, oh yeah, my childhood wasn't traumatic.
Sure.
And it's like, well, yeah, it as an adult looking at it, it wouldn't be traumatic. It's not traumatic in your mentality as an adult looking at it, but when you were a child, that was absolutely traumatic.
It was the worst thing you'd gone through up to that point.
100%. And so I use the word chaos because a lot of people will go, oh yeah, if I say, was your childhood traumatic? They'll go, no. And I'll go, was your childhood chaotic? Oh yeah.
Yeah. And
then I go, okay, great. And then I flip it and go, what you have to understand is that chaos is traumatic to a child.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. The instability.
The instability, the lack of safety, and all these different things. And so, for me, I grew up in a alcoholic home.
Sure.
My dad was an alcoholic and still is. I mean, he still drinks. And, it just, the level of chaos that created would be hard. I think it would be hard for people that maybe didn't grow up in an alcoholic home to understand, how much, even having one parent as an alcoholic, how much chaos, again, to use that term, can cause. And so as a very young child, I just never, that chaos, I was never able to feel safe.
Sure.
I was never able to, count on anything. I was constantly essentially living in fear would be a good way to say it. And the other interesting thing that I find about growing up in an alcoholic home is, or really any home for that matter, is that as a child, you assume that your environment is everyone's.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Oh, every kid's dad is like this. You know what I mean? You just have this expectation. It's all you know, so you don't know any different. And so my dad, was just he is not a good person when he drinks. And then again, alcohol affects everyone differently, and he was one of those people where when he drinks, he's just not a nice person.
Yeah.
And it took me years, and I'll mention that later, but I didn't really understand who he was without alcohol. The first time I saw him, well, I'll jump to this very quickly. The first time I saw him sober, truly sober, was when he got in a DUI, hit an RV head on, and was in the hospital in a halo. And obviously he couldn't drink. He was in the hospital for like 6 months or something. And I was like, who the hell is this guy? I'm like, he obviously got a massive head injury, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't know who this guy is.
Sure.
Like, he was making jokes and just doing things that I was like, who is this?
Yeah.
And then it took me a while to realize, oh my God, this is probably the first time I've seen him sober. So
no kidding.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
When was that?
That I was 26.
Okay.
Yeah, when that happened. And I should mention this too. Like, I hated my father.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely hated my father because he wasn't him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he was the alcoholic side of him was who he was almost all the time. And,
yeah.
And make no mistake, my dad worked very hard. He was a heavy equipment mechanic. He worked on a field truck. I mean, he would work 12, 13, 14-hour days, and then probably drink when he got back or on the way home, whatever. And then he would get home and he would pass out.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought all dads got home and went to bed. So it was part. I remember constantly seeing, going to the, going with him. He would always stop at the liquor store and buy beer. I probably went to a liquor store with him, thousands of times.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a child growing up in that environment, I developed a real hatred, or hatred's not the right word, a disdain for alcohol.
Sure.
And beer specifically. I know he was drinking hard drinks, but he wouldn't do it at home.
Yeah.
Because it pissed my mom off. So I only saw beer. And so I just developed a disdain for beer.
Yeah.
And to this day, I've never drank a full beer in my entire life.
Really?
Never
That's
one
incredible.
time. Yeah. I mean, I had, every once in a while, you have situations where, someone, take a drink of this, whatever.
Yeah.
But I've never drank a beer. I've never ordered one. And I've always been that way. And so what happened from that environment, it was, and there was more, causes of the chaos other than
Sure.
my dad's alcoholism, but that was definitely, the core factor that really kind of shaped my childhood to a degree.
Right. Yeah. So I want to stick to the terms that you use. Let's stick to that term chaotic. You said a lot of pretty profound things. Do you feel like, obviously you had a pretty cool career in the military, and I'd like to get into that. But do you feel like maybe that chaos that you grew up with, maybe that's part of the reason why you were attracted to the military? Maybe you were looking for more of the same?
So yes, and so much so that that's really what my book's about.
Yeah.
Yeah, the book. So the book's actually called Forged in Chaos.
Yeah.
And I'll, just because you asked me, I'll kind of jump forward to jump back on that. So I came up with this idea that I'll briefly describe.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone was telling me, when I got in the military, got, hurt overseas, got out, medically retired, and it was quite a few years of surgeries and all that crap. And then finally, when I was done with that, obviously there's no doubt in my mind, in hindsight, that I was clinically, depressed at that time.
Sure.
And, obviously I wasn't doing too well mentally at that time. So I started, seeking help, and I went to the VA, I went to, civilian mental health professionals.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I, kept getting told over and over again was PTSD.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, what is it exactly? Obviously, I, knew to some degree.
Yeah, I'm sure you understood conceptually.
I've seen First Blood. So I was like, all right, but what, you tell me what it is as a professional, and I listened, and it just didn't fit how I felt. It just didn't fit. And so I was like, okay. And then I tried to say, I'm like, I just don't, it just doesn't fit how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't agree with that. And then finally, and I can be aggressive, and so finally I was getting a little frustrated. And finally I just said, like, well, do you have PTSD? And the woman goes, I said, have you, or do you have PTSD? And she goes, no. And then I said, well, then what do you know about it?
Mm.
Like, what do you know? What experience personally do you have? How can you can tell me what you think about it,
Yeah.
but you don't know how it feels.
Sure.
And I'm telling you that I don't feel that way. And, you don't have any experience. So how do you know that I'm wrong? And, it went downhill from there.
Sure.
But anyway, so I left, and I just was like, you know what? I'm going to figure out something that makes sense to how I feel. That led to, a many year journey of figuring it out. And what I came up with was, and I detail in my book, where something happened that my behavior was very odd.
Yeah.
So odd that it didn't make any sense. And I had to explain, I had to figure out a way to make it make sense. And here's what I came up with. And this will all tie together with really everything. And that is, if you think of PTSD, the first word is post.
Yeah.
Post-traumatic stress disorder. The problem with post-traumatic stress disorder, and first of all, also of note, post-traumatic stress disorder is diagnosed only for an event. It is an event-based diagnosis, and you cannot diagnose PTSD until a minimum of 30 days post-event.
Really?
Yeah, that's within the requirements within the DSM to diagnose. And there's more requirements, but post-traumatic stress disorder. And what I realized is that post-traumatic stress disorder assumes a pre-traumatic stress baseline.
Oh, it's interesting. Wow.
And it took me a long time to realize this, but I never had a pre-traumatic stress baseline.
Sure.
I grew up in a traumatically stressful, consistent environment that was traumatically stressful every single day. And so at that time, it's about 2010, I was like, okay, because I was trying to explain to people, my brain doesn't work the way that you're saying it should work.
Sure.
I am definitively saying that it doesn't work that way. I know my truth, right? I'm like, you're saying it should work this way, but it doesn't. And not only does it not work that way, but it actually works the opposite way. And so what I came up with is LTSD. I don't have post-traumatic stress disorder. I have lack of traumatic stress disorder. As a child, my brain was so used to the traumatically stressful or chaotic environment that it neurologically rewired or adapted itself to be calm in chaos.
Sure.
So now when the environment is chaotic, I'm chill as a cucumber. I'm calm mentally.
Yeah.
Conversely, when the environment becomes calm, the chaos now goes in my head. And the way that I calm myself mentally is by putting the chaos back into the environment.
Sure.
I create chaos, and then I go back to calm, because chaos in the environment is what I'm wired for. That's my homeostasis. That's my default. That's my normal. And when I came up with that, it's like all the dominoes fell. And I went, that explains how I feel.
Sure.
And actually, when I first came up with it, and this is the critical part that'll tie us in, when I first came up with it, I was like, oh, that must have started, I didn't put the childhood piece together.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that must have started in combat, in the military, in training, right? I don't know where in training, but that must have started there. And then there was, other times where I was talking to people, and specifically, which we'll talk about later, I went to Warrior's Heart, which is a rehab facility. I'm sure you're familiar with it. And every single person there, every single one had relatively the same or similar childhood.
Really?
And that's when I went, I don't think that's a coincidence. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, no. That is where that started, is in childhood.
Wow, that's really interesting. So you said that you would, I wanted to get into how, I wanted to get into a lot of things, but you talked about inserting your own chaos when chaos isn't present.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me a little bit about how that manifested? What did that look like?
Yeah, so funny you say that. I actually yesterday thought of, I'm going to make a list of creating chaos behaviors.
Sure.
But I'll tell you what I'm going to argue is, like, in my opinion, top of the list, addiction. I think addiction is up there.
Right.
And I'm saying addiction, I'm not defining addiction, because I think it's every addiction.
Yeah.
Alcohol, drugs.
There's similarities.
I think every addiction has the same basis.
Yeah.
And another real problem, which I think is critical to understand about addiction, is so many times when addiction is treated, it migrates to another addiction.
Yeah.
That is
you replace it with something else.
Yeah, you replace it with another addiction that doesn't feel like an addiction, right? It's like, oh, I stopped drinking. And it's like, yeah, but now you're a workaholic, dude.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, but that's okay, because...
well, culturally, that's seen as okay.
Culturally, it's seen as okay. So you're like, oh yeah, that's not that bad.
Yeah.
But really, and it may not be as bad of side effects, but you had a symptom, you treated the symptom, and it created another symptom. Mm-hmm. You've never treated the disease, in my mind, and that's something that's very common. So, a couple other examples other than addiction is. Thrill-seeking behavior, high adrenaline seeking behaviors, buying a motorcycle and, when everything's cool, you're like, I got to get out of here. And you hop on the motorcycle and go at 120 miles an hour on the freeway in the, 1 a.m. I'll tell you one that I did was dating, women that were
chaotic.
You know what I mean? Like, or unavailable in some way, or or toxic, or I shouldn't say they were toxic, more the combination of us together was toxic. And I would just seek out that chaos, and the problem is that I was doing it subconsciously.
You didn't realize in the moment that you were doing it.
I didn't know why I was doing, I knew maybe sometimes, like, you have some idea, but you didn't really subconsciously fully understand why you were doing it. And even work, overworking. I'll take that one separate. Less as an addiction and more, it's hard to see creating chaos. We don't see it as creating chaos. I think most of us see it as self-destructive behavior, and we go, "Dude, I'm just self-destructive." And you're
self-sabotage, however you want to call it.
And you're aware of that.
Yeah,
but what it really is it is self-destructive, no doubt about it, but it's self-destructive. It's really just creating that chaos back, which happens to be self-destructive.
Yeah.
It's not self-destructive for self-destruction's sake.
Sure.
It's self-destructive, but it's really about creating chaos. And so for me, once I understood, and by the way, when somebody just goes, oh, why did that guy do that? All right, it's crazy. You got PTSD.
Yeah.
What's the solution for that?
Sure.
Drugs? Or medications, aka drug.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the solution for that? But when I figured out that I'm creating chaos, and now I'm about to do something, I'm about to create some chaos, but now I am aware consciously of why and the mechanism, then I go, oh, wait a minute, man. I know what I'm doing, and it's not a moral failing. It's just a cause and effect. I am just trying to take my brain wiring back to its homeostasis.
Yeah.
Then that allowed me to have some kind of ability to recognize and go, I'm going to make better choices.
Yep.
Rather than just subconsciously doing something, reacting, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. And
and then you're like, oh man, I'm such an idiot because I'm so self-destructive. And then you get in the judgment cycle, and then it's just a loop that no different than the normal addiction cycle circle that we see in more clinical terms. So that was pretty. Once I realized that the addiction to chaos started as in childhood, that is when it really opened my eyes to the why. And I think the biggest way to say it is, once you understand that, you really, it becomes, again, less of a moral, failing and more of a normal adaptation to a given set of circumstances.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So you talked about similarities. We kind of touched on that a little bit. And when I was dealing with my own stuff, I pretty young identified like, oh, I've got some problematic drinking here, but I never really had like a rock bottom necessarily. And so I did end up going to a group at one point. And the guy there had hit rock bottom. The guy that like ran it had hit rock bottom at one point. And he was like, hey, you caught this pretty early. He said, you're going to hear some stories and you're going to be like blown away.
Yeah.
He said, don't look for the differences, look for the similarities. And sure enough, we all kind of felt like everybody that starts on that journey of, maybe you say recovery or whatever, getting control of the problematic behavior, whatever that may be. It's really easy to be like, oh, I was never that bad. I never got a DUI. I never lost my job. I was never homeless.
Yeah.
And then it's because there's shame associated with
100%.
How, did you ever have, shame that you had to reconcile with? Like, was that ever present for you?
I would go as far to say that shame was probably the biggest single factor.
Really?
In my opinion. But I think a lot of us, I think the core of all addiction is shame. Mm-hmm. I just don't think most of us realize it.
Yeah.
And I think, let me back up. I think most people realize the shame factor once they hit rock bottom.
Yeah, for sure.
Then they go,
then you can't ignore it.
You can't ignore it. It's so bad. You're like, oh my God. And, for me, I'll tell you what, this wasn't rock bottom.
Yeah.
But, most people would probably think it was, but
Sure.
It wasn't. But when I was in Warrior's Heart, so I was in rehab, at 40, whatever I was at the time. And I just remember being there and being like, dude, how am I? Look, if I was in rehab and at 22, whatever, it wouldn't be that big a deal.
Yeah.
But like rehab at 40 something, I'm like, dude, how did I end up here? You know what I mean? Like, and it was this, and again, it sadly wasn't rock bottom, but it was definitely, that was a wake up call for sure. Because the only conclusion I could come to, and make no mistake, I mean, I fought when I actually had to go to another civilian rehab for 2 weeks before I went to Warrior's Heart. Dude, I fought that tooth and nail.
Really?
Oh, dude, I would. This is gonna sound funny, but it's so true. I literally would have escaped. The only reason I didn't escape that rehab was because they didn't care if you escaped. And so when I found that out, they're like, yeah, if you want to leave out the window, cool. I'm like, boring. You know what I mean? It's like, well, now that's no fun.
There needs to be a potential conflict.
Yeah,
someone
like,
needs to chase me.
Yeah, I'm like, I need guards,
Nobody's going to tase me.
I was about to say, I'm like, maybe not guns, but at least tasers. Come on, and when I had learned some guy escaped and they just watched him like run away, I was like, oh man, well, that's not worth it,
So in addition to thrill seeking, I'm seeing some challenge seeking.
Yes, absolutely. Well, think of what you just said though. It's conflict seeking. Conflict is chaos.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Another one that we didn't say, but I'll say it because we're on that topic is, dude, creating fights, starting arguments. That's right down the creating chaos checklist.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not just creating fights with, some random dude at a bar.
Yeah.
It's also creating fights with people that you love.
Yeah, romantic partners. Or
exactly.
Family.
Or family, children, not necessarily creating fights, but causing conflict or all those different things, all creating chaos behaviors. And so I definitely fought, it took me, I think it was about 4 days, if I remember, at that rehab facility before I kind of settled in and just kind of went with it. And the big thing that I had to realize and accept was, I'm like, okay, I'm here at 40 whatever. And then logically I went, well, the only possible way that I'm here is I'm here as a result of my choices.
Yeah.
If, But
That's a place not a lot of, well, I don't want to say not a lot. That's a place not everyone gets to. Personal accountability.
And if there's anything that I feel has helped me, if somebody, said the one thing that's helped you more than anything, it's really calling BS on myself.
Yeah.
You have to
Calling
call
yourself out.
BS on yourself. I actually do say this in my book, but everyone is so focused on the negative effects of the lies that other people tell us.
Mm-hmm.
No one realizes that the lies we tell ourselves are far more dangerous and will affect you way more negatively than lies other people tell you.
And they're not overt like the lies that
and we know exactly how to lie to ourselves.
Yeah.
We're good at it, right? We know just what we'll believe or what we want to believe, and then we tell us those things. So you really have to learn how to call yourself out. I think that's a critical point of growth in general. But for me, when I just kind of realized, well, I'm obviously here as a result of my choices.
Mm-hmm.
So obvious, and then the other part that came from that was, well, it must mean that a lot of the things that I believe are either not true or wrong or whatever. Like, the path that I took ended up here. I don't want to be here. So the only way I can look at it is I need to take a different path.
Yeah.
And so I started on that path, and I have I went to rehab once, and I was like, I'm gonna fix this. It's like a movie character that goes to jail. I ain't going back, man. Like Heat. De Niro in Heat. I'm never going back. And so I really made it was a wake up call for sure.
That's awesome. Awesome in a way. You got the wake up call for sure. But okay, so we talked about your childhood. We've talked about some of your interpersonal relationships, stuff like that. You had a really prolific career in the military. And can you start us like right at the beginning? What drove you towards it, and then kind of what that looked like?
Yeah. So to your point that you said earlier, I think that a lot of us, again, everyone's different, but I think a lot of us are driven towards the military from that chaotic childhood component. I think that's, in my opinion, I think that's probably the number one cause of people joining. And it's not negative or anything.
Yeah.
It's just
and again, our own reasons.
Yeah, well, that, and I also think it's something that we're not aware of. I didn't know this, or I didn't even have this idea or concept until maybe 2 years ago. If you would have asked me, prior to 2 years ago, I would have been like, I joined because I always wanted to be in the military, which is 100% true.
Yeah.
But I couldn't tell you why I wanted that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know where it came from.
You couldn't identify what was drawing you to it.
No, I know it was always there. And as far back as I can remember, I wore camouflage to school every day as a kid.
Yeah.
I was that kid. And luckily it was, woodland and not,
digital.
Yeah. Then I would have really gotten beat up.
It's so sad, and I know I'm probably going to get canceled for this, but I like the digital camo.
Oh my God. I'm canceling you. You're canceled. Wait, which digital one?
Don't come for me.
UCP?
Oh gosh, well, I think it was. It's the
one that looks like
grandma's
gray,
couch.
Grandma's couch. Yeah, that's the worst camo.
I know that should be a war crime.
Yeah, this is another story, but there's a great story on why that camo was chosen, which I'll tell you off air.
Okay.
It's scandalous, but it's a great story. And actually, when I tell you, you're going to go, "Oh, that actually makes sense." The only reason the camo would ever be chosen, it's probably the worst camo in the history. The redcoats. All right, from Britain
with
had
a giant
better camo.
X on their chest.
Yeah, the redcoats had better. The British in the Revolutionary War had better camo than that pattern. But I really just always wanted to be in the military. I'd go to air shows and go nuts. I would see a military convoy driving down the road, and I'd be obsessed.
Yeah.
And so for me, when people used to ask me on podcast stuff, why did you join? The answer that I always gave was, I don't feel like it was ever a decision.
You feel like you were all like his destiny, fate.
I feel like I had to do it. I feel like I had to do it, and so when I went through a phase in high school where I think a lot of people, and this was, Rage Against the Machine was like, the Killing in the Name chorus at the end. And so I went through this like rebellious phase in high school where even though I wanted to be in the military, I grew up in Bakersfield, California, and in Bakersfield, there's three things you do when you get out of high school at that time. Go work in the oil fields, go to the junior college, or join the military.
Yep.
And so me, I was that kid back then that if I loved a band and then someone else started listening, everyone started listening to it, I would no longer like them. You know what I mean? I was that guy. Like, they suck now, whatever. And so when I got out of high school, I actually first moved to Los Angeles to work in film.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think I mentioned this in the book. And I spent, I think, about a year. I really didn't know. I knew I wanted to work in film, and it's going to sound ridiculous, but I didn't know as what.
Sure.
It's not like I was like, oh, I'm going to go be an actor.
You just wanted to be in the industry.
I just wanted to tell stories, which now I look back and it's so obvious to me that I wanted to write and direct.
Yeah.
But because of how little faith I had in myself at that time, I just didn't even think I didn't think I could even say that. You know what I mean? Like it felt impossible. I felt like imposter syndrome, obviously. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so I went out there and I just tried to get into the industry, which, at that time there was no internet. It's not like you could, look it up and figure out your way. I mean, there was probably like AOL at that time,
Back in the days of phone books.
Yeah, exactly. So I actually remember calling people out of the phone book. That's no joke. So, and what happened, luckily, I didn't make any headway. I remember going to an audition, which is another crazy story.
Yeah.
And it was just strange. And so I didn't make any headway, which was great, because after about a year, I went, you know what? I want to join the military, and if I do start making progress in this Hollywood, thing, I'm not going to leave that progress to go join the military.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I don't know how I had this awareness at that time because I was, a teenage moron, but I went, you know what? I should do the military now because it's a young man's game, and that way I can do that. And at that time, I thought, I'll go do 4 years,
Sure.
and then I'll get out, and then I'll come work on this. And so I ended up joining actually from the Hollywood recruiter's office.
No kidding.
Yeah, literally from Hollywood. So when I went to MEPS, it said Hollywood on my thing, and boy, did I get crap over that.
God, the drill sergeants had a field day with that.
Hollywood. I'm like, ugh. Little did they know they were right.
Oh God, I love it.
Yeah, it was funny, but yeah. So I joined, and then and actually, I mentioned it earlier in a joking way, but on a serious way, a big part of me joining was First Blood. Yeah, I mean,
really.
It was movies in general, but
Sure.
I watched First Blood and the character John Rambo, and I think it was because I didn't really have a male role model that I looked at movie characters as my male role models.
For sure.
And this is gonna sound ridiculous, but it's true. I watched John Rambo, having PTSD, and I was like, that looks cool. I want that, right? Like, I know it sounds crazy.
I want a little of that.
I was like, yeah, that's dangerous. I want to be dangerous. And I did, because I was getting picked on. I was a nerd in school, I was that kid that I was athletic, but I was definitely a nerd. And so and I got picked on a lot when I was younger and beat up and stuff. So I think I wanted to be that character. I wanted to be feared and respected rather than beat up. Yeah. And so I was like, I want to be a Green Beret.
Sure.
And when I went to join, I was like, I want to be a Green Beret. They're like, that's awesome, kid. Can't do it. I was like, what? Because there was no extra 18 X-ray contract at the time.
Oh, wow.
And it didn't start until after September 11th. So,
no kidding.
So I was like, all right, what's the the hardest thing you can give me a contract for? And they're like, Ranger Battalion. And I'm like, sold, sign me up.
Nice.
And it was funny too. People are always asking me like, why didn't you become a SEAL?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, probably because I can't swim.
I mean, I think that's
ship
one
has
of the
sailed.
requirements.
Yeah, I'm like, that ship has sailed. No, I don't float. I literally don't float. So
Just drop like a rock.
I literally just sink, you know. And people are like, everyone floats. I'm like, yeah, okay, everyone floats. I won't go to the bottom of the ocean, but I can tell you my head won't be above water. Like, you know, I won't sink, but like I'll drown, right? So it was always the Army for me. I just was always attracted to the Army.
Sure.
It was just I think I liked the size of
Yeah.
it. You know, I liked how big it was.
Yeah.
And being a kid who nerded out on you know, military history, just, you know, World War II history and everything. And
Yeah.
I was just kind of fascinated by, and also what's weird for me at that time was like the special operations part of the Vietnam War
Mhm.
was just not as known to me at that time.
Sure.
I knew more about, like, you know, the Hamburger Hill and Tour
Yeah.
Duty, the
Well, those
show.
guys
and
didn't really talk about it.
that's what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
like the SEALs and the Mac VSOG. It's not like they were making, you know, Vietnam SEAL movies or Mac
Right.
VSOG movies at the time. So I wasn't as aware. Really, the first special operations movie that I really saw was First Blood, and then I was just like, ugh, I want to eat stuff that would make a Billy goat puke. It just sounded cool.
I don't think you cannot fathom unless you are in the American military. Like, you can go to the PX on most major, I'm going to say any major American military installation every single day, the entire time you're there, which will probably be around 3 years, and not see the same person twice. And so it is a subset of American culture, and it truly is its own culture, and it comes with its own, you know, pitfalls. And I mean, there's good things that come out of it. You know, I love, like, guys like you you paved the way for a lot of things, because now you have veterans that are very openly in almost every professional space, right? The entertainment industry, corporate America, and it's not like I don't know. It's just not like, people are proud to be veterans. And I think it's great because it shows you that you can succeed. I do want to ask you, so we have a culture surrounding alcohol in the military.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any similarities or differences between what you saw in your initial stint in the entertainment industry? And even now, you know, what are the similarities and differences with the military and that industry specifically? Because a lot of people don't work in that industry.
Ironically, I was just having this conversation yesterday. I forget what we were talking about, but I was just telling someone how this you know Cody Alford.
I for sure have heard the name.
Yeah. So he's working on this movie right now, which it's awesome. And we were just talking about it, and I was and he was having a great time, and this other guy, and they were like, oh, dude, this is being on set's so cool. And I was talking to somebody else about it, and I was saying how most military people don't realize how similar. I mean, obviously a lot of differences, but there are so many similarities between working on a set and being in the military.
Oh God,
there's a lot of similarities,
100%.
And you know, it's a team sport.
Mhm.
You know, you're working long hours. You know, and it's a machine.
You work until the job's done.
Yeah, you work until the job done. There is no, I'm getting off definitively at this time.
Yeah.
That's not
If the senior guy says, don't touch that thing, you don't touch that thing. It doesn't matter if it's just some random rug. You're like, why is this rug holy? And and they're like, no, we don't touch the rug. You don't walk on the rug. It's like, why is the rug on the floor then?
So that exact thing is actually in production. And I'm not joking, here's how it works. And by the way, this is, in my opinion, the hardest thing for military people when they start working on set. Here's what happens. You show up day one, and they're like, all right, we need that chair moved over there. And I'm there, let's say, as a military advisor, right?
Yeah.
And somebody yells, the director yells, I need that chair moved over there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at the chair. I'm 5 feet away from the chair. I'm looking at the chair. 10 seconds go by. 20 seconds go by. And I go, oh, well, dude, this is ridiculous. I'm going to go move the chair.
Yep.
We're waiting on that chair being moved to film. I go grab the chair. What the hell are you doing? Put that down. Huh? What? You can't move that chair. Yeah, it's not that heavy. No. You can't move that chair. It has to be done by someone in the chair moving union. 100% true. Yeah, 100% true. So every single thing on set is part of a different union.
Yeah.
And you are only allowed to touch or interact with what is in your specific job description.
You have to
So you
stay in your lane.
You have to stay in your lane. But the hard part for, veterans is like, you'll literally be looking at something.
Yeah.
There'll be something needing to be done.
Yep.
And everyone else is eating sandwiches and only one group of 10 people can do it. And that's just the way it works.
Yeah.
But that was very hard for me to get used to, not being able to help everyone with everything.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that, because like in the military, you'll show up with a big group of service members, whatever branch it is. And then everyone should have an idea of like the overarching thing we need to accomplish. And so, maybe I don't have anything to do in the moment. And so I see the radios haven't been filled.
Yeah,
so now I'm walking around and filling
Yeah.
radios because I'm an Intel guy, but I know how to fill
Yeah,
radios.
yeah.
And so that's what I can do to help in that moment, because
Yeah.
the commo guys are dealing with the
10
commander's
other
truck.
things, yeah.
Yeah. And so, and it's funny, many hands make light work
Yeah,
is
yeah.
very much a military mentality. Like, hey, let's just throw bodies at this problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, in certain industries, that's just not the way it is.
No, absolutely. And to your question about, I would say, having worked in production now for a while, it's very obvious why addiction of any kind is so strong in that industry. It really, especially for performers,
Sure.
it's really tough.
Is it the pressure?
I think it's less well, partially.
I'm sure it's a number of reasons.
It's a combination, but I'll give you an example. It's like when you're on camera.
Yeah.
And you got to be on. Well, we're on camera right now.
Yeah, right.
But you know what I mean. Imagine doing this, but we're running around, doing whatever, and every single take, the director's like, more energy.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a 14-hour day, and it's balls cold in whatever North Dakota or whatever, and it's snowing. It really is an industry, and they don't care. The machine doesn't care how you perform. They just care that you perform.
Yeah.
And so it really is kind of a powder keg for creating and definitely reinforcing addictions, whether it's alcohol, drugs, or
Sure.
or anything like that. And I fell into absolute addiction spiral on multiple levels. From probably the worst addiction I ever fell into was from just the grind
Sure.
of production.
Yeah.
I mean, we were doing at that time, arguably, we called them Friday days.
Yeah.
Which is you would work every day from about 6 to 7 or 8, but then on Friday you'd work from 3 or 4 till 4 a.m.
Oh, wow.
And then you go to bed and you wake up and it's Saturday at like noon,
Sure.
or 1 or 2, and we did that for 3 seasons.
Yeah.
And it was there's no time for anything at all, and so it really just I was just doing anything I could to keep going.
Sure. Yeah. That's really, really interesting. So, I mean, the combination of reasons, obviously there's a combination of reasons in the military community why people develop problematic behaviors. I mean, what was your observations as far as the military culturally, like with alcohol specifically? What did you see, especially given that you were part of the premier community, the one that everybody talks about?
Because of what I said about, my father, I looked at alcohol very negatively.
Yeah.
And therefore, I also did, and obviously I didn't know nearly what I know now, but I also kind of had some level of awareness that I had a potential addict or alcoholic in me. I was aware of that. I remember being a teenager and just knowing I needed to stay away.
Yeah.
I just had some level of awareness of that. And so I did not drink. I did not use a drug of any kind. I didn't smoke pot a single time. My entire childhood, teenage years, the first drink of alcohol I ever had in my entire life was the night we got back from Afghanistan.
Really?
That is the first drink of alcohol.
How long had
I
you
ever
been in the military at that point?
3 and almost 4 years. 4 years.
And was that on
Yeah,
the conventional
yeah,
side?
4 years. Yeah. No, this was in range battalion.
Gotcha.
And let me tell you, prior to that night, being a private in range battalion in the 90s, I mean, it was not good that I didn't drink.
Yeah,
It
I
was
believe
not
that.
good.
Yeah.
I
A lot
took-
of peer pressure.
I took a lot of heat rounds. I took an unbelievable amount of peer pressure, and I mean, here's a quote. This is a direct quote. I remember telling, I don't know who it was like E5 at the time, whatever, and I remember saying, "I don't drink, Sergeant," and I remember him looking at me and him going, "Well, I don't trust anyone who doesn't drink."
Yeah.
And in my head, I just remember thinking, well, that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
what does that have to do with anything? But there was a lot of pressure to drink, and I definitely took a lot of flack for it. That being said, the reason I was able to not at that time was, dude, I had went through a crazy amount of peer pressure, in my high school years. So, I just said no, and that was it.
Yeah. This is like a '90s drug commercial, right?
Dude, I just said, as soon
Just
as
say no.
As soon as I said that, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe, because I always say when they say just say no, I always say that's the dumb, just say no from like Dare from the 80s.
Dare will be the second season of the podcast.
Yes, Dare. And I remember thinking, just say no. Great campaign, that works. And then yet I just said no. So no, it's not that easy, but I did do it. But when we got back from Afghanistan, we got back in at like 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. and we turned our stuff in, turned and burned, and went. I was in Fort Lewis, Washington, and we went to Seattle, to go out.
Sure.
And we were all, happy and excited. I had just re-enlisted for 6 years, and it was a good time.
Yep.
Right. And we went out to this bar called I don't know, something Tiki. I'll never forget it. And I was there with I was a sniper at the time, and I don't know, there's probably like 10 or hell, there might have been 12 of us, I don't know. And they bought me a shot of vodka, I believe. And it was just like, come on, man, we just got back. You got to drink with us. And it was just like, I don't know, it was just like a weak moment because of, it was like the one time the peer pressure worked.
Sure.
And in my head I was just like, well, yeah, we just did get back. That kind of makes sense. That's a justification.
Do you feel like maybe you earned it?
No, I didn't. I just felt at the time like it was I just felt like it would have been wrong to say no. Right. And it was like a moral, come on, man, we all just got back. Like, It just felt like it was more weight than the normal pressure, right? And so I was like, sure, fine. So I had a shot of alcohol, a shot of vodka. And after that, and I know this will probably make sense, but like after that, the next night we went out and, oh, sorry, that was the other point. So after that first shot, I'd never literally had alcohol in my life.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, dude, you're going to get totally wasted, right?
Yeah.
And, like 10 minutes goes by and I'm like, I don't feel anything. And they're like, oh, you're definitely drunk. And I'm like, I don't.
Look how drunk he is.
Yeah, I'm like, he's asking if he's drunk. That means he's drunk. And in my head, I'm like, I don't feel any different, right? And so, another 20 minutes goes by. I'm like, guys, I don't feel anything. This is not exactly, what everyone's hyped it up to be. And it turns out that, though I had never drank, apparently I got the, the genetics from my father, because it took quite a bit the next night to actually feel the effects. But so once I had that first drink, I was just kind of like, well, I had a drink now. I'll see what it feels like.
Nobody died.
Right? Yeah, nobody died. Like, I'm good. And so the next night, I think I had like 3 shots before, in pretty short succession, before I actually was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then that just led to,
that kind of started a downward spiral.
Slow, but yes, that led to, we literally went out, I want to say we went out every night from the day we got back, we went out every night to Seattle for 10 nights.
Sure.
Drank till, the bars closed at 2,
Yeah.
drove back, got back to base at 3, and then woke up at 6 and, ran 10 miles. We're in our 20s. What do you want from us? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that just, led to really me starting to drink. And I only had 2 speeds, and this has been my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
I either drink till I'm drunk or I don't drink at all.
Yeah.
I wasn't a person who could have 1 or 2, which at the time, by the way, I justified by going, well, what's the point of drinking if you're not going to feel something?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I still don't think that's ridiculous logic. You know what I mean? It's like, it does
You can see the logic.
Yeah, it makes sense, So that's what I did. And it really wasn't, there's a term that I just can't think of right now. What is it? It's a progressive. That's the word. It's a progressive disease, right? So you start out and you're here, and then, it really progresses until you hit rock bottom.
Sure.
And then, it goes up from there when you start fixing things. And so I started, drinking to pretty much, if we went out,
You just want to get blitzed.
I was getting, not necessarily blackout drunk at that time, but close.
Sure.
And I think at that time also, I kind of maybe looked at it as, I didn't party when I was a teenager. I didn't go to parties. I didn't drink, so now I was 26 or whatever.
Yeah.
Or no, 20. No, I was probably 23 at the time.
You're well over the legal
Yeah,
age to
yeah,
drink.
well, 23, 24. But I was like, well, now I'll.
Felt like you missed out on something.
Yeah, I missed out. Like kids go to college. I was
Yeah.
past college age, and I didn't have that party phase. So I think I justified my excessive drinking at that time as just, this is just me having fun or whatever.
Sure.
And again, it really, I was definitely drinking too much when I drank, but it didn't really get bad until I got hurt. And when I got hurt, as I said, I was definitely in a clinical depression.
Sure.
No doubt about it. And that is when
Were you prior to getting hurt? Or
Or say it again, sir?
were you prior to getting hurt? Like, were you depressed prior to that? Or is
Oh,
that
no.
what-
No. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I don't. Yeah, I had never felt what I would consider depression.
Sure.
Everyone feels down
Yeah, yeah.
at times, but like depression, I had never felt that in my life until I was out of the hospital, done with surgeries, and I was just a shell of myself,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term. And I mean, my arm, I couldn't use it, and
Yeah.
it was just I couldn't be me. It's the best way I can describe it. All the things that I felt were things that were in line with who I was, I couldn't do.
All right. So, you had your first alcohol at 26, after witnessing problematic drinking your entire life. And that kind of started, sounds like a slow descent.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really, I definitely drank too much, no question about it, prior to, getting hurt. I remember actually I was in a training course, and I drank and I don't even know how I drank this much, but I drank so much that the next day the medics had to and this is when giving IVs for drinking wasn't a thing, and I think they gave me 2 IVs to just even function that next morning.
Yeah.
Which, and I shouldn't have, it was not the time to be doing that. And so it was not good, but it wasn't out of control, for lack of a better term.
Sure.
And then, the injury happened, and, as I said earlier, I was definitely clinically depressed, no doubt about it. And the additional factor that happened was, as I stated earlier, I had never done drugs of any kind.
Yeah.
I had never even smoked weed. And so when I got injured and I got put on pain medication,
Oh, yeah. I'm terrified of pain meds. They make me feel like there's no problems in the world. I've only ever been prescribed them, but like
that is, dude. I'm gonna tell you this. This is the most ridiculous thing a doctor has ever said to me. I was taking, all these pain meds, right, that have been prescribed, and again, I had no experience with them. I didn't. Also, no one said, hey, these Dilaudid is basically heroin. How would I know that? I didn't know that. And so I remember definitively asking a doctor one time, I said, hey, when I take these pills, I know they're for physical pain, but like, do they make you happier? And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, do they like put you in a better mood? And she goes, no, they don't do that. And I was like, oh.
You're like, well, they do for me.
Yeah, in my head, I was like, oh, well, that's weird. You know what I mean? And why the hell did she tell me that? Did she not know? Like, I don't know. Anyways, so the point being is I started taking, opiates for physical pain. And then I noticed that if you drink while taking opiates, it's a disproportionate effect. And so I remember being out of the hospital in my apartment at the time. Pretty much everyone I knew was still deployed. And I remember just taking pills and drinking every single night by myself. I can honestly say that was the first time in my entire life that I was solo drinking.
Right.
Every other time prior to that, actually, let me go further. I not only would only drink prior with people, but I had never drank at home, ever.
Oh, wow.
I didn't have alcohol at my house.
Sure.
So after, I got injured, that was the first time that A, I was drinking by myself, and B, I was drinking not out, for social drinking. Sorry, that's the term I'm looking for. So that's when it definitely ramped up to a certain degree. And then it just, again, got progressively downhill from there to the point where, maybe a year later, when I moved to Las Vegas, I mean, I was legitimately going out 5-ish nights a week and drinking till I almost passed out every single night. But again, it's easy to justify when you're doing that with a group of people and you're out having fun and you're partying. It's like I didn't really recognize that it was a problem because I just was like, oh, we're all doing that. We're all having fun. We're all partying. And it really took me a while to really see it as the problem that it had been the whole time.
So, you talked about you hadn't ever done solo drinking, and so things are getting progressively worse. So throughout this process, were there any moments where you kind of maybe realized like, ooh, I might be moving towards an issue here? Like, did that ever come up? Any hint of anything?
I think I buried it.
Yeah.
And the reason is because I can tell you, so when I was in probably more high school, not necessarily a kid, but when I was in high school and I saw people drinking and getting drunk, especially high school students.
Sure.
I would just look at them and be like, oh, that's so weak.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just looked ridiculous to me, drinking and then just doing stupid stuff. And I was just like, oh man, like I'm stronger than that. I don't need that to have fun, blah, blah, blah. Right.
Sure.
And so then when I'm, drinking later, I'm subconsciously judging myself that I caved.
Oh, wow.
Now I'm the person that I used to look down upon.
Yeah.
But I'm also, again, talked about earlier, lying to ourselves, right? So I'm also burying it to kind of hide the shame that I felt about myself.
Yeah.
But I think all of that, in my opinion, that's not the core problem.
Sure.
The core problem that I buried so deep that it was so buried in my subconscious, I wasn't aware of it, but I was aware of it subconsciously. It was bothering me, but I wasn't aware of what's bothering me. And that was, I know that at some level, I looked in the mirror and saw my father.
God, and then
And
I
I
mean,
hated him at the
yeah,
time.
I was about to
And so
ask.
when I looked in the mirror, I hated myself because I had become exactly what I told myself as a kid I wouldn't.
Did you find that was cyclic? Like you're now looking at a person that you don't really care for, and so that made you want to drink again, drink more.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's definitely a downward spiral at that point. And um, I mean, I think I really just continued to take, drink alcohol and take substances to continue to bury my own hatred at that time towards myself.
Right. That's well, it's easy for us to look back and like realize all this stuff.
100%.
But when you're in the middle of it,
Dude, I say that all the time. Like, it's like the book I did. Like, I try and tell, I'll lay out certain things and people are like, oh, wow, that makes so much sense. How did I not see that? And I'm like, hold on.
Yeah.
Like, dude, like, I've been working on this for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for 15 years, I didn't know any of this. Hindsight's 20/20. I can talk about it now. I can look at my childhood and go, oh, this must have meant this, and I did this because of this. But when you're in it, you don't know. And we really need to, in my opinion, judge ourselves less for what we don't see until we're able to see it in hindsight.
Yeah, wisdom's great, but you've got to go through it to get it.
100%.
Yeah, and then hopefully we pass it on, which is what we're trying to do here.
Exactly. You got to mess everything up to have the wisdom of why you messed up what you messed up, and why you wouldn't mess it up today. But the only way to know is from the experience of making those mistakes.
Yeah, it's really easy to justify the problematic behavior, especially when the problematic behavior is like allowing us to hide, or hide how we feel, or just, I remember when I kind of got my drinking under control for the first probably 6 months, because I chose not to drink for probably a year and a half. I didn't have any alcohol. Once I realized, like, okay, I definitely have a problem here, I decided on abstinence for a period of time. I now have a healthy relationship with alcohol, but I remember thinking, like, I'm not going to be, like, fun anymore, because I thought I needed alcohol to, like, have fun or be fun, to be funny, whatever, and that's something that I still work through now. It's been many years now since I got it kind of under control, but that's something I still kind of work through in therapy. But so you talked about the injury, you were clinically depressed, and like, what was there anything that you did to kind of address that, like, and what were the challenges associated with the substance use and that depression, and like how did you work through that?
So, the thing that I realized was, to bring up PTSD again, here's a good way to say it. So would you say that in the veteran community, when we get out, would you say it's pretty common for people to have identity crisis issues? Oh,
Lord, yeah.
What about lack of purpose issues?
100%.
What about, there's another one I was going to say.
Direction,
yeah, all these different things. We know how serious of issues those are in the veteran community, right? So one of the problems I had was when I was going to these, professionals, and the problem, singular, that I was told had 4 letters. Now, if you take identity, all the things we just mentioned, where do those fit into PTSD?
Oh, wow. I mean, it doesn't really address that stuff.
They have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah.
So one of the problems that I think is one of the main problems in my mind in the community is that we're being told that the problem is like one thing.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's 10 things, right?
Yeah.
And I think we all at some level know that, because I think addiction comes from the fact that you feel so buried by so many things at one time that you feel like you're underwater getting hit by waves, and you literally don't know which way is up.
Yeah.
Right? So then you just go, well, I'll bury myself deeper in waves of my own creation, right?
Sure.
And so for me, one of the things that really helped me was just starting to identify the different specific issues.
Yeah.
Instead of just going, oh, everything is this, I went, okay, there's this, and then there's this, and then there's this, and then there's this. And then once I had them kind of laid out, I started addressing them one at a time. And as I addressed one at a time, and sometimes a couple together if I could, but that's when I started getting disproportionately better. And with alcohol, or in my opinion, any addiction really, you know, the substance is not the problem. Alcohol isn't the problem. Alcohol is a very bad coping mechanism,
Right.
but it's not the problem itself. I'm also going to go on a limb here, and this is my own opinion. I don't think trauma is the problem. Because if trauma was the problem, then that would mean if we just, the problem is when we say trauma is the problem, the way that it's looked at now is that trauma is a mental problem. Okay? So the theory is if trauma is the core issue and we can deal with that trauma and process it, then that's the cure of the disease, right?
Sure.
Alcohol is a symptom of the core disease. But trauma may be the problem, but it's not, in my opinion, addressable purely by, trauma is not just a mental problem. It's a physical problem as well.
Sure.
And you have to address the physical component of addiction.
What does that look like?
Well, going back to what we said at the very beginning, I think it's a little bit different for everyone.
Sure.
But for me, it was really understanding the physical, the way that your body and brain chemistry, for lack of a better term, and I don't even think it's brain chemistry. I think they'll find out it's more brain structure and pathways than chemistry. But when I understood that is really what, when I understood the way my brain was working, that's a better way to say it, then I understood the nature of my addiction infinitely better.
Right.
I understood, like, I'll give you an example. Here's a great example. I know for myself, and I know this is what I'm about to say is common for most addicts of any kind, but a non-addict won't understand what I'm about to say. It'll make zero sense to them. So there were times where I was, let's say, sober, and then boom, I relapsed, whatever, fell into addiction, right? And then it happens, and then the shame cycle starts, right? And, you know, my exes or whoever it was at the time was, you know, on me, like, you screwed up, you suck. And I did screw up and I did suck. But I would, like, think about it in my shame cycle and be like, okay, when did I choose that?
Yeah.
And I'd be like, I don't remember the choice to grab that or whatever it was. Like, I'm like, there was no point where there was option A and option B, and I went addiction, option B, right? I'm like, I didn't have the choice. If you say that to another addict, they'll go, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I know exactly.
If you say it to a non-addict, I know. If you say it to a non-addict, they'll go, oh, what's that? It's called an excuse.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, you chose. It's you chose. It doesn't work like that. We choose everything. And then they're not intentionally, but it's like an unintentional gaslighting because you're then questioning yourself. Wow, did I? And it took me a long time to realize, no, dude, it's just two different brain pathways, for lack of a better term.
Sure.
So once I really understood how that was happening, once I understood the nervous system and all the different ways that it kind of, it's really a survival, it's really an ANS, autonomic nervous system. So it's basically happening almost automatically.
Really?
To where, that's, I'm trying to not get too scientific with it, mainly because if I start talking science, scientists will be like, that's wrong. So it's like my lay understanding of it, but it's like you're about to, basically something happens that trips that circuit, and then it just goes into automatic mode. And it's really, here's the best way to say it. When I understood the nature of addiction, that our brains are not internally, again, this is my lay definition, our brains, because of our development, didn't learn to internally regulate certain things.
Sure.
So we had to externally regulate. So addiction to me is an external form of regulation that a person that didn't have certain traumatic experiences that wired their brain that way don't experience that because they can internally regulate. We can't internally regulate, so we externally regulate. But once I understood that, and once I really looked into the science of it, it changed my complete perspective on addiction, because then I saw it as a cause and effect.
Yeah.
Make no mistake, I'm still responsible for my choices.
I was about to bring that up.
I'm still responsible for my choices. But it didn't change my feeling of responsibility, but it did change my shame.
Yeah.
And I no longer looked at myself as a bad person. And I no longer looked at myself as a failure. And I no longer looked at myself as this unworthy person, unworthy of love and affection and all these different
praise or whatever.
Exactly. So that changed everything for me, because then I just saw it as no. Here's the cause. This is the effect.
Yeah.
And that literally changed everything for me. And it just, once I didn't feel like I was a moral failure, it really allowed me to take more ownership for my choices, if that makes sense.
100%. Yeah. And yeah, I remember when I started learning about this stuff, when I went to the group that I went to, they hand out like pamphlets and stuff, educational material. And I'd read it mostly because I'd get distracted, like while people were telling stories. I've always had like ADHD, can't focus. And so I'd be reading this stuff, and I started learning about it. And yeah, it's like what became really effective for me was putting a buffer in between myself and the thing that I wanted to do. Just giving myself a split second to think about the decision is all that it took for me to really make a drastic difference. And then when I identified that, I never felt like I wasn't responsible for my decisions. And that's what it sounds like we're saying when we say this kind of stuff. Like when we're trying to learn it and we're like, it's automatic. We can't really control it.
Yeah.
Not absolving myself of the responsibility of the decisions I made or the mistakes that I made. But understanding it has been really healing for me and also the people that I love that I've affected.
100%. Same thing. And the term or the phrase that I like to use now is, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
100%.
You being an addict, you being an alcoholic, whatever it is, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. It is your responsibility to change it. And the core of addiction, the science is pretty clear on that, where it fundamentally comes from, for lack of a better term. And so for me, understanding all of that, it really just opened my eyes and made me, once the shame part was, I won't say gone, but once it was like it just opened the door to possibilities that I just couldn't step into before, if that makes sense. And it really, this is gonna sound crazy, but for me, with certain, like when I understood that component, and most people will tell you this isn't possible, but it was for me. When I understood that component, parts of my addiction were shut off like a light switch.
Really?
Just gone.
Yeah.
Like gone. And it was this major awakening, and it was just like I had been given a choice. That's the way to say it. It was like I'd been given a choice that I didn't have before.
Yeah.
It was like I saw possibilities where previously I didn't see any.
Yeah.
And I too, just like you said, and I don't know how long, I probably didn't drink at all. Maybe 3 or 4 years.
Sure.
Give or take. And I still don't drink much, but like, I'll give you an example. Maybe, it's probably 4 months ago now. My fiance and I had never had a drink with her. We've been together for 3 years. So it's been over 3 years, because I've never had a drink with, since I've been with her, and I've been with her for 3 years. And I don't know, maybe like 3 months ago, 4 months ago, we were out somewhere and we were just talking about that. And she rarely drinks. but she ordered, a glass of wine or whatever. And I was like, you know what, I'll have one with you. We never had one together. I'll have one with you. And I ordered a glass of wine. I wasn't worried about it, you know. And I ordered a glass of wine and I drank it. Now, one thing I'll say, I don't know you're this way, but I can tell you, I will drink anything. I don't care what it was, fast. So I drink alcohol fast.
Delete the drink.
Because I just drink everything fast. It's like, it doesn't matter if it's alcohol.
It doesn't matter if it's water.
Juice. Yeah, I'm like, blah, right? And so I do, that was probably not alcoholism, but that definitely did contribute.
You have an all or nothing personality.
I have an all or nothing. I'm just like, it's there. I got to finish. It's like a completionist mentality. But I think I had 2 glasses total, and I was driving, and I'm like, I'm not having any more. But quite frankly, I didn't want any more. I didn't.
Sure.
I didn't care. It was no problem, and I just remember thinking like, wow, like how different my impulse is. And again, why are you drinking? Are you drinking because you're like, oh, I need alcohol? For me, I wasn't drinking because I wanted alcohol. I was drinking to get away from myself.
Yeah.
I was drinking to disassociate. I was drinking to escape. And I know that's obvious. I mean, we all know that. But I don't think we realize when we're in the middle of it just how much escaping is really the mechanism that causes us to do it in the first place.
100%, yeah. Now, it's really interesting you talk about, it's going to sound crazy. And something.
We're crazy here, buddy. Let's get weird. Yeah, let's get weird.
But yeah, something was able to let you turn off part of this, really make some headway on your problematic behavior and just turn it off like a light switch, you said. But I mean, that's everything. Like there truly is no one size fits all. And I know I keep saying it, but I don't think that it's lost value. And I love that you found that. And on the theme of there's no one size fits all, I went to a group. It was not AA, but it was like a group for people that had problematic behavior with stuff. And, that worked for me. Groups don't work for everybody. Do you have any experience with like groups like that, AA, anything in general?
Yeah. So I went to AA, the rehab facility model and AA are pretty intrinsically tied in the U.S.
Sure.
And so, I went to meetings for, I don't remember exactly how long, maybe a year. I'm not exactly sure. But, look, AA as an organization, in my opinion, think probably few organizations have done more, universal good in helping people than AA. It's 100%. Been around, almost 100 years. And, I mean, the way they deal with money is pretty crazy. They don't make any money. And so I think it's a very benevolent, I don't even know if it's
altruistic.
I don't even know if it's like called an organization necessarily, but you know what I mean? As a entity, I think it's been super helpful. I can say, and I know a ton of people, my very good buddy has been in AA since he was 18 years old. He's, 30 something now. And so it's been very helpful for him. Me, I'm going to go back to what I said. 2 things. One, different modalities for different people.
Yeah.
And for me, AA, I think I said this earlier about, I'm the kid that when other people like the band, I'm like, I don't like the band anymore, right? It's
you don't want to walk the same path that everybody else does.
Well, I'm just, for me, it's like, you ever see Grosse Point Blank?
Yes. I
love that movie. But the thing where he's like, will there be meetings? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, no meetings, right? And that's kind of how I am. And look, I think, here's my opinion on AA. I think it works for a lot of people. There's no question about it. For the people that it doesn't work for, which was me, I see there's some things in AA that in my personal opinion, again, it was the material, for lack of a better term, was created in the 20s, right? During the Roaring 20s, and so it's very much not based on current science because it's super old, right? And in my opinion, there's a lot of things that we now know scientifically that I think could maybe be incorporated into kind of their doctrine that may allow it to expand, the people that maybe fall outside of their certain program, if
Sure.
that makes sense. Like the one thing that I don't agree with AA, and again, I know where it comes from. If you look in the 20s, it was probably 1,000 times more excessive than it is now, but any addict or alcoholic for that matter, I mean, addiction was considered obscene at this time,
Mhm.
but alcoholism, it was very much seen as a moral failing.
Sure.
You were a bad person. Oh, you're an alcoholic? Great, you're a bad person. That was just the way it was at that time. And, if you still look at AA doctrine, that's still there. Like, it's still there to a much less degree, but the term character defects, the fundamental core, and again, 12-step program works. And why it works makes a ton of sense. It's a great template.
Yeah.
The one area where I feel that it could be better is that when you say that you're forever an alcoholic,
Mm-hmm.
I fundamentally disagree with that.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I disagree with that is because you and I are not.
Yeah.
We were definitively alcoholics. There's no doubt about it.
Sure.
But we're not alcoholics today. And when you have a program that pushes such a hard line
Yeah.
of abstinence or you're gonna die,
Yeah. It's really like anytime you see zero tolerance programs, it's like we live in shades of gray.
100%. Nothing is black or white. And so for me, I think the surrendering mentality to your own character defects and accepting that you have character defects, I personally it didn't work for me.
Mhm.
And it didn't work for me. And here's why I don't think it works universally. I mean, how many stories are there of people being in AA for 30 years and then, I don't know, they get divorced, and then boom,
Yeah.
off the wagon, right? To me, I can tell you the biggest single thing that helped me, which I've already said, but I'll reiterate it now, was the removal of my shame by understanding the mechanism of addiction.
Yeah.
Once the shame part was gone, and don't get me wrong, I still feel bad about the people that I hurt, during my addiction.
Yeah.
But once the shame part was kind of tamed, for lack of a better term, once I understood the why, that is what ultimately led to me being able to fix my addiction. Because the addiction, in my opinion, addiction is a side effect of shame. So then if your program is saying, yes, you should feel shame because you have these character defaults and you got to continue to go to meetings or you're going to fall back in addiction, in my opinion, you've never cured the disease because, as I said earlier, the disease is shame.
Mm-hmm.
And if you keep shame in the model, then you're never curing the addiction. You're never curing the disease. You're just abstaining from essentially, numbing the symptoms,
Right.
if that makes sense. And so, and it's also very, let's be honest, it's very religious based.
Yeah, for sure.
Which for me, with where I was with religion at the time, that was kind of where I was like, I don't know about this,
Yeah.
right? And now I'm I go to church every Sunday with my fiance. I'm in a much different place religion wise, but I think that's also where maybe they could help more people is if they, if it was less about surrendering
Sure.
to your own character defaults. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah,
But I'm probably a bad person for saying that. So I feel shame now. I feel shame.
it's okay. I'll be a bad person with you.
Yeah, we can be bad. We can be bad.
Yeah, I just, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's the fact that I've been in the military for as long as I have, or, the fact that I'm a contrarian or whatever. But anytime I'm told you can never do that, I'm like, but can I? Can I though? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm
And
the
so-
same way, dude.
I for sure have to recognize, because that's a shortfall of mine. It's worked really well for me, like in, social media content, stuff like that, because I don't not wanting to walk the exact same path that everyone else has. Like, I love living in ambiguity. I
Yeah.
love living in the gray, and I
Yep.
feel like I operate well there. Sometimes I got to fall in line, as we all
Yeah.
do in certain situations in life. But yeah, it's really, really interesting. I want to talk about your work in the entertainment industry, really anything that you did after the military, because you've seen some significant success.
Well, it's funny you say that because, one of the reasons too that I wrote my book was I've heard that, oh, your military career, and then you're doing this in Hollywood, and what's interesting to me about it is and again, it sounds so cliched, but it's like I don't feel it that way. It's just nothing I've done is anything that's worked. I'm like, okay, what's next? More, and by the way, make no mistake about it. Storytelling, I love. It's my passion, but I just don't view anything that I've done. None of it changed the way I felt about myself.
Really?
And that was one of the biggest. Well, let me say this because I think this is the core of addiction. What I'm about to say. I think the core of addiction. We did say shame, but shame is almost a side effect, arguably, of this. I think, and I'm also going to go big and say I think this is also the core problem in the veteran community. So we talked about PTSD, identity, blah, blah, blah. I think the core disease in the veteran community is a lack of self-worth.
Gosh, that's really interesting you say that, because something I have struggled with, and I'm not really sure when it started. I'm still kind of working through it, but something I've always struggled with for as long as I can remember is when I'm paid like a compliment, I don't believe it. I just,
that is right down the lack of self-worth.
Yeah, and it's crazy because, I look at some of the things that I've done and I'm like, I believe that I'm doing good in the world, but like, I just can't.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to feel
that's what I'm saying.
proud of myself, or
you're crushing it. Like you're crushing.
I don't believe you.
But it's the same thing when you're like, oh, you did this and you did this.
Yeah.
I could say the same thing to you, but do you feel that way? No.
Right.
You go, I've been okay with done stuff, but I made so many mistakes. Like you just downplay it, and I'll tell you where it comes from in me, I'll tell you where it comes from, in my opinion, with myself. When you grow up in a chaotic childhood, that's a bad environment, and a child knows subconsciously this is not good.
Yeah, something's off.
Something's wrong. Children are egocentric, and they think they're responsible for their environment. My parents got divorced when I'm 5. Must have been my fault, right? That's just the way parents see the world, or kids see the world. And so when a child is in an environment that it knows is bad, I believe the child goes, well, I must be bad, and that's why the environment's way. So what happens is we don't develop a true sense of self-worth because we've got this innate sense of being fundamentally bad.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a lot of side effects. I'm going to go on a limb and say 99% of every bad thing, negative thing that's ever happened to me, to a degree, was a result of a lack of self-worth. Not only that, but I can say for myself, I didn't even know what real self-worth was until probably 2.5, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, I would look at the kids that, were super confident and had that worth and, whatever. And I would look at them and go, okay, where's that coming from? And I would, observe. And I would always find something. Oh, that kid's super athletic. That kid's super good looking.
Yeah.
That kid's got rich parents. That kid's got really nice clothes. And, this one, all the girls like, whatever. I would always find something external. And as I said, 2.5, 3 years ago, when I realized, oh my God, self-worth, and really understood what it meant, then and where self-worth comes from, it does come externally. And for children, it comes from the parents.
Right.
The way you are treated is what instills a sense of self-worth. And if you were never treated in a way that would instill self-worth, then you won't have it.
Right.
And so, as a child, I was, I detail in the book, but my brother was just an absolute nightmare to grow up with for different reasons. And so I was just kind of ignored. I was the good kid. And so my parents just really didn't deal with me because he was such a nightmare. And then my dad, was an alcoholic. So there was always conflict.
Mm-hmm.
It was, fighting every single day. And my brother caused a lot of that. So I would just be like, I'm just going to not be here.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of my childhood alone. And I didn't get picked to go to the water slides. And I was that kid that would watch, everyone leaving and having
Mm-hmm.
fun. And I literally, not figuratively, had 2 imaginary friends growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, which, hey, now I create towards, giving me the imagination I have.
Sure.
So look, there's got good side effects for all this. But I think that, now looking back at those kids that I spoke about earlier, at least
Mm-hmm.
the ones that I knew like their parents and I knew well enough, now I look back and go, oh my God, those kids' parents just instilled that worth in them.
Yeah.
They made them feel like they had worth.
Right.
Now it's so obvious. But so the problem that this creates, and I'm going to flip this all, problem that this creates is it creates people that feel that all of their worth has to come externally.
Yeah.
And I call it trophies. What's a trophy? Money, fame, the shape you're in,
Yep.
how you look. Those are all trophies. And you can have all the worth and confidence in the world while you have that shelf full of trophies. But once those trophies go away, which is what I learned when this happened,
Mm-hmm.
once those trophies are gone, I was in a depression because I had no more trophies.
Yeah.
My shape, gone. The cool job I had, tough guy job, gone. All the capability I had, gone. I felt like I was Superman, and then one day all the powers were taken away.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had absolutely no internal self-worth. And then I'll add on to that think about it this way, dude. If you have a bunch of people that have no internal intrinsic self-worth,
Mm-hmm.
and then you join an organization where you literally, not figuratively, literally wear your worth on your chest, head,
Tabs,
and
badges.
shoulder,
Yeah.
dude. And then you have all the worth in the world while you're there.
Yeah.
And then once you leave and you're no longer wearing that value, what do you have?
You got nothing.
You got nothing. And so it's not just an identity issue. It's not just a purpose issue. It's a worth issue. And I'll finish that piece with this. I don't care. Somebody can stand up here with 18 PhDs. No one can tell me that someone is killing themselves that truly values themselves.
Right.
It ain't happening. There's
Yeah.
no way. Suicide is the result of a fundamental lack of self-worth, among other things.
Sure.
But that's got to be the core, because if you truly felt that you had worth, you wouldn't take your own life.
Right.
And yet, what are we told the issue is? Oh, it's PTSD. What does PTSD have to do with worth? Nothing.
Yeah.
So we need to look a little bit, more broader and realize that it's more than just one single issue with 4 letters. And it's a broader, and again, what does PTSD have to do with addiction? I don't think anything. It's not definitive that a person who has PTSD is going to be an addict.
Yeah.
And again, people are different. But there's a lot of issues out there, and by talking about all the different things, I think we can start to steer people into looking at maybe how broad the issues are that we're experiencing, and start to seek help for everything, rather than maybe just focusing on one.
So I joined the military in 2012, and I enlisted as 35 Fox. I was an all-source intelligence analyst. And it's funny because the first time I had, not an encounter with you, but the first time I saw you was on TV, literally.
Oh, yeah.
You are on a TV show.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was, really cool that I was going to get to do this interview. Pretty profound for me, now working in this space. But can you tell me about some of those kind of cool opportunities you've gotten to get, like some of the successes that you've had?
Yeah, for me, a lot of people don't know what I just said earlier, which was, the 2 things I wanted to do as a kid. Well, I didn't say this part earlier. The 2 things I wanted to do as a kid, and I mean, young, probably fourth grade, was be in the military and work in Hollywood. And then, as I said, when I graduated high school, I initially went to work in Hollywood. So, when I got medically retired, well, I went, back to that essentially. And, a lot of people, have been like, oh, why do you, why did you want to do that or whatever? And look, I always wanted to tell stories, but specifically after the military, it's like I tell people, dude, they're going to make military and veteran stories no matter what.
Yep.
Whether we like it or not, whether we agree with it or not, Hollywood is going to make those stories. And so for me, I was like, you know what? I want to have some input there to try and steer those stories and those portrayals as authentically as they can be, rather than them, basing it off of what they think, not off of what we know.
Sure.
And so I was very lucky, and it took a long time, dealing with, the scum of Hollywood in the beginning, just, D and E-list producers, for lack of a better term. I dealt with a lot of bad people, and finally, after several years, I started meeting good people.
Yeah. And
I started getting opportunities, and, the opportunities I got, it's one of those things where it's like any opportunity. If you get an opportunity, it's very simple. Work your butt off, make the person who got you that opportunity look good. And then if you do that, there will be more opportunities.
Right, yeah.
And then rinse, cycle, repeat. Simple as that, right? And so I was very lucky. The first big movie I worked on was Suicide Squad, which was awesome because I was on camera for that for, 6 or 7 months, whatever it was, which was just a crazy, it was just a
That's
crazy,
incredible.
It was a crazy experience, being on camera with a bunch of superheroes. That was fun. And so, but that was just like, that was a big movie, and I learned a lot there. And then, I once SEAL Team happened, actually I'll say this because this is a critical point too. You have to take a lot of risk to chase your dreams.
Oh yeah.
And you know this, but I cannot overstate that enough. Like, when I got called for Suicide Squad, I got called on like a Wednesday, and they're like, hey, can you leave Friday to Toronto for 6 months? It's like,
And you're like,
right. And I literally left a relationship to do that. And
No
that,
kidding.
Yeah, it ended up being good, but it was, pretty crazy at the
huge
time.
decision.
It was a huge decision, and I had to, and it was a toxic relationship at that point, and I just had to choose the direction that I wanted to go. I had to choose my future over my past.
Yeah.
Simple as that. And, but it was a hard decision. And then when the pilot came up for SEAL Team, again, it was like a Wednesday, and they're like, can you be in New Orleans by Friday, for I think 6 weeks. I was like, yeah, happened again. And then I literally quit a very good paying job, full-time, very stable, good paying job. I quit it to go do that, which everyone said was stupid because, 1 in 100 pilots, turn into a show.
Yep.
And so I just, again, that was my dream. And so I quit and took that massive risk, and, I ended up working on that show for 8 years, and it was like being paid to go to film school.
Yeah. I do think it's funny because, like, we look at those of us in the military, like when you're in the military, you're not making a ton of money. So, like, the idea of quitting a job that pays a lot to go pursue something you actually want to do, we're kind of like, whatever, I've lived not great before, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you have some of the most elite operators on the planet, and they don't make a ton of money.
No, it's not a ton of money. And, it's, and on that note, it is very weird to be, I'll tell you this because this is just such a funny story. I've gotten this from probably well over 100 people, where people are like, hey, when you're when I was filming SEAL Team, like, do you ever like get PTSD or like,
Do you get a flashback?
yeah, or like, does it does it, take you
Does
back
Fortunate Son start playing? in the back?
yeah. And they're like, or do you ever like feel like you're in real combat or whatever?
Sure.
And I understand because I know what they see.
Yeah.
It looks real when they see it, and I'm like, no. Like, it's really hard to feel like shit's serious when I can see behind the camera and someone's eating a plate of sushi.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's really hard for me to take it seriously, and but it was pretty funny getting paid really, really well to basically like mimic training.
Sure.
In a way. So I was like, yeah, that was odd. Also, like the stunts in the entertainment world, they're like, this is a super dangerous stunt. You're like, well, that's not dangerous. Yeah. There's a net there,
You're like, that's a Wednesday in a barracks.
Yeah, you're like, in the military, I would do that. There'd be no thing. If I fall, I'm dead.
Just put the PT belt on.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, that's not dangerous, And I'm not saying stunts are not dangerous, but just the safety protocols they put in. Military is like, oh, he died. Next, right? I'll just pull another one, right? But it was a great opportunity to tell, the way I saw it is we were telling universal military stories through the conduit of a SEAL team.
Right, yeah.
Because they have great branding.
Oh, yeah. I mean, other than them, the Marines are probably the only ones that do it better.
Yeah, exactly. So it was, but they were really universal military stories. And I was very proud. I mean, we talked about stuff on that show that I personally am shocked that CBS and Paramount allowed us to talk about.
Really?
Dude, when you're talking about TBI and PTSD and all this stuff on network TV,
yeah.
I mean, dude, I was shocked that they approved some of the storylines that we put out.
That's really interesting.
I mean, what the show, in my opinion, what the show is really about, does fast jumping onto a building look cool? Yeah, it does look cool. It is cool. But as opposed to a recruiting commercial that doesn't show the downside, I feel what the show was really about is, yes, this job is cool, but it is also a fundamentally self-destructive life.
Sure.
And you can do this job and you can do these cool things, but they come at a cost. And here's what the cost looks like back at home. And I felt that we did a good job of portraying the reality rather than of the life, rather than the one-sided recruiting commercial version of it. And so I'm very proud of the show because of that.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal show. Really good show.
Yeah, no, I'm very proud of it, and the stuff that I'm working on now, which I can't say exactly.
Yeah.
But there's multiple things that I'm working on now to continue telling those types of stories.
Sure.
And in different ways, and in different. Well, I'll say this. My one negative about SEAL Team, and I said this 1,000 times while I was on it, was, God, I wish there's so much to me, and I'm sure you'll probably agree with this. To me, like, my story is more interesting of me being out than me being in. As a storyteller, objectively, right? There's way more interesting parts of my story from when I got out than when I was in. And I think most people would agree with that. It's so, the one thing I, struggled with on the show is that we never had, like, it happened a couple times, but in general, the characters were all in.
Oh, really?
They were never out, right?
No kidding.
And so we never really could explore any of the themes that I was, like, wanting to talk about. And we explored a lot of great stuff while it was in, but we never got to jump to where it was out because the characters were never out. And so
did they have acting experience? Like, or was that their first time doing anything like on camera?
Which
you're saying the characters in the show were still in the military?
Yeah. No. Sorry. The characters were still in the SEAL teams.
Oh, I get.
They were active duty the whole time on the show.
Gotcha.
They were never out, right? And so we were never able to do any veteran type stuff because we did a couple with a couple characters early on, but by and large it focused around all active duty people. And so the next project that I'm working on centers around it's a veteran story, not an active duty story. And that will, it gives the ability to really tell, to insert a lot of the themes that we're talking about today into the storytelling. So I'm very excited to continue working on that, because I just love, putting out these stories that not only can educate maybe the public into this world, but the amount of time, I couldn't tell you how many times I got messages from people that were watching SEAL Team with like their significant other, and being like, oh, I love the show, like my wife, watches it and she understands me better. Or I've heard that many times, and so hopefully I'll be able to do that with something a little veteran centric rather than active duty.
Sure, absolutely. Have you gotten the opportunity, like, because you've been through a lot, you've gotten to a really good place, you've done a lot of like self-development, healing, whatever you want to call it. Have you gotten to help somebody else with, like, who's in that situation? Like, have you given any kind of mentorship, guidance, whatever you want to call it, to anybody?
Unofficially, yes. Quite a few. I try, and anytime if somebody messages me with really about anything, if anyone's asking for help, I will help them in whatever way I can. I spend quite a decent amount of time either on messages like that or on the phone. It depends on the situation.
Sure.
But I do it unofficially, not officially. Like, I don't have like a program, per se.
Sure.
I just, if somebody asks for help, I help them.
Yeah. It's phenomenal. Well, Tyler, we really, really appreciate having you on. You've been incredible. You are a tremendous storyteller. I can tell you that, having now talked to you for quite a while.
Well, thank you very much.
You've had an incredible military career. You've overcome a lot. You've done a lot of self-reflection. You're very clearly very self-aware. You have an understanding of, like, really, you've gotten into the weeds, behind the science of this stuff, for you personally. And it sounds like you're also doing a lot to help other people. I want to throw it over to you now. I want you to have the opportunity to say whatever you want, whatever you want to pass on to the military and veteran community, anybody who may be struggling with alcohol or anything else, or family members.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing, and as we've said multiple times, it's different there's some similarities among everyone, but there are some, there's differences among everyone as well. But the one thing that I can confidently say is critical, at least was for me, and I think it has to be to everyone to a degree, is you have to understand the nature of the problem. You just can't, what is it, monkey,
hear no evil, see no evil.
You can't do it. You have to understand, in my opinion, you have to understand to some degree the why.
Yeah.
And because if you don't understand the why is the cause of the problem. And if you don't understand the why, you're never going to truly fix it. For me, understanding the why, or having a much better understanding of the why, really was the game changer for me. And so I recommend to everyone, you gotta, one mistake that I think we're all making in really every aspect of our lives, and I'll say, AA or AAA, no joke, AAA is an example of this. We're now outsourcing everything.
Yeah.
We're outsourcing the responsibility for everything, to changing a tire on a car, to our own health. And it's not, you can't do that. And the reason you can't do that is because, make no mistake about it, you are responsible for your health, both physical and mental. It's no one else's responsibility to solve it for you. And so once you accept that responsibility, then it's on you. And like, doctors are great, but they don't know your whole life. They can't know your whole life. They don't have that much time. So you have to bounce things off them as the expert they are, but you still need to be your own case manager, right? To a certain degree. You got to do your own research. You got to learn. If you have a condition, it's just like a person gets cancer. Do you think they go, oh, I have cancer now, I won't look that up on the internet, right? No, they do all the research they can. If you talk to cancer survivors, they know a ton about cancer. And that's how they beat it,
Yeah.
right? I mean, to some degree.
Sure.
So it's critical to have that awareness. So probably the thing that I would leave people with is do your research on your problem, because the better you understand it, the better you will understand how to solve it.
That's incredible. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you for your time.
This is the Check Your Six Pack podcast, a veteran and military podcast done in conjunction with the Center for the Study of Traumatic Stress and Uniformed Services University. We really hope you enjoyed this story and are looking forward to many more. I will see you next time.
Good morning, good evening, and good luck surviving another Behind the Beakers briefing.
We're your friendly neighborhood neuroscientists. I'm Dr. Sarah Maggio.
And I'm Kelly Huber. Don't worry, Tyler. We don't think you're weird for being excited to talk about this topic, because we are too.
In fact, you're the least weird person in this episode.
It's a really low bar.
The bar is so low, Austin's the bar. Anyway, Tyler brings up a lot of really fantastic discussion points, but one thing I want to bring to attention is a big theme throughout this podcast. There's no one-size-fits-all for treatment, and the only way to know what's going to work for you is to try some things.
And this is true across the board for treatment for everything. It may not be the first thing you try. It could be a combination of things. It could be a whole arsenal of things. But no one should be discouraged if the first thing they try isn't right for them.
In the journey of taking back control, everyone should feel empowered to tell their treatment provider when something isn't working for them.
They didn't invent it. They won't be offended if you don't like it.
Only you know your truth, not those egghead doctors. Anyway, we should all take notes from Tyler's approach. He asked questions. He refused to accept a diagnosis that didn't fit with what he was experiencing.
He took control of his journey by seeking to understand what was going on in his brain. And when he learned the science behind it, it was a major awakening for him, and he finally felt like he could take back control.
Tyler also talked a little bit about the link between childhood experiences and mental health later in life. This is a solid setup for a concept that may hit home for a lot of our audience, a nervous system that's pre-wired for high stress and hypervigilance.
Some of us were training for chaos before we even ever signed up for it. What happens in your childhood can rewire your biology, which explains why some people feel more comfortable when things go sideways.
The body's stress systems are built to help us adapt, but a lot of exposure to intense or prolonged stress or trauma in childhood can overload these systems and cause them to malfunction.
It's like installing a combat system in a kid who just needed basic training.
The brain learns that high alert equals safety. Chaos becomes the new baseline. Quiet feels like a threat.
So when the stress of the job kicks in and the system's already hot, it doesn't take much to redline. That's when coping behaviors like drinking start to fill the gap.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Alcohol has its dirty little hands in everything, and GABA's one of them.
GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter, meaning that it regulates brain activity by suppressing the firing of neurons.
Higher levels of GABA produce feelings of reduced anxiety and relaxation.
Like long walks on the beach or playing with puppies.
The sweet smell of spent ammunition.
Right. So anyway, alcohol increases GABA by providing temporary stress of calm and this perceived relief of stress.
But it's a trap. Alcohol's not a coping mechanism. It's camouflage.
In the long term, alcohol can make your feelings of stress and fear even worse, and this is linked to GABA.
High GABA activation opens the floodgates for dopamine, the feel-good neurotransmitter. But long-term heavy drinking can desensitize GABA receptors.
This is a form of tolerance called functional tolerance, where it takes more and more alcohol to get the same effect. Functional tolerance is usually acquired by consistent heavy drinking and is a high risk factor for developing AUD, as it trains the body to adapt to consistently having alcohol on board.
This becomes the new baseline and leads to withdrawal symptoms when alcohol consumption stops. This can get you stuck in a vicious cycle.
But there are medications available to treat and prevent withdrawal symptoms, such as delirium tremens. They can also help reduce relapse, assist with decreasing or discontinuing alcohol altogether, and potentially reduce brain damage.
Some medications combat the physical effects, and some tackle psychological aspects.
For physical effects, naltrexone can help reduce alcohol consumption in heavy drinkers by reducing craving and helping to control physiological dependence.
Acamprosate reduces the unpleasant effects of abstinence and helps reduce craving by rebalancing brain chemistry.
Disulfiram, or Antabuse, deters drinking by causing nausea when alcohol's on board.
Kind of like how I feel when I see Austin. Antidepressants like SSRIs and SNRIs can treat psychological symptoms. Some of these things like anxiety and depression that lead you to drinking in the first place.
It's important to note that these medications are just one tool in your arsenal. Therapy is another important tool that can help you understand why you drink and help you develop the coping strategies you need to develop a healthy relationship with alcohol.
Knowledge is the first intervention. When you understand the science behind your reactions, you can stop blaming yourself and start leading your own recovery mission.
Your past may have trained your system for war, but you can still teach it how to live in peace.
Hey, I want to tell you about Pushups for the Mind.mil. It's not just another mindfulness app. It's an evidence-based training program built for service members by neuroscientists working with the Department of War. This isn't about zoning out or relaxing. It's a structured training path starting with short daily sessions that build into a 4-week program. You'll learn how attention works and you'll train it, just like physical fitness. Each step builds mental strength, sharper focus, and better composure under stress. It's designed for the demands of military life, and it's free for anyone with a .mil address. Start your journey with Pushups for the Mind.mil and make your attention mission ready.